All right, so have you ever noticed how a room with nice wood floors just feels warmer, like cozier?
Yeah, there's just something about them, right?
It's instant character.
Yeah.
But the thing is, even the toughest floors, they get beat up over time.
Oh, for sure. Scratches, dents, you name it.
Exactly. So today we are doing a deep dive into the world of wood floor repair.
I love it. I mean, wood floors, they've been around forever, right?
Right.
From like rustic cabins to fancy palaces. It's always a classic.
It's true, and just like anything else in a home, they need some love now and then.
Absolutely, some TLC.
Okay, so we've got all of our sources here ready to help us fix those everyday problems that pop up.
Nice.
We're going to go from little scratches all the way to deep gouges plus water damage, those gaps between boards.
Yeah, the gaps, those get everyone.
We'll cover it all.
Good. Well, and the cool thing is, you don't need to be like a master carpenter to do most of this stuff.
Right.
A little know-how and the right techniques, you can totally get your floors looking amazing again.
I like that. So what's the biggest enemy of a wood floor then? If we're trying to fix them, what do we need to battle against?
I mean, it's going to be moisture, right?
Moisture.
Moisture, yeah, it causes like warping, cupping, those gaps, all of it.
Yeah.
Think of wood as a living thing. It breathes. It expands and contracts when the humidity changes.
Oh, okay. It's like a delicate dance then between the wood and the environment.
Exactly. So that's why we're going to learn how wood behaves. That way we know how to fix it when things go wrong, but also how to prevent it in the first place.
Right. Makes sense. But before we dive into all the fixes, we got to diagnose the problem.
Oh, absolutely. Got to figure out what we're dealing with. Like a doctor wouldn't just prescribe meds without checking you out first.
Oh, totally. So how do we assess the damage? How do we become like wood floor detectives?
All right, step one, we got to figure out what kind of damage it is. Our sources, they break it down into four main things: scratches, dents, those gouges, water damage, and then the gaps.
Okay, I like that. Nice and organized.
Could have a system, right?
All right, so let's start with the most common one, scratches. Seems like everyone's got a few of those, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I was surprised to see how easy it can be to fix light scratches.
Yeah, it's super easy if you catch them early.
It almost feels like a cheat.
Right. Just a little bit of wood floor cleaner, get the dirt out of there, then a touch-up marker or one of those wax sticks. Bam, you're done.
Just buff it.
Little buff. And it's like magic.
Okay, but hold on. How do you even know what color to get? Like, matching the wood seems tricky.
Yeah, color matching, that's key. If you want it to disappear, it's got to be the right color. You know, it's like an artist mixing their paints. You want to blend that repair right in, make it invisible.
So what's the trick then? Do you just have to have like a special eye for it?
Nah, it's more about the technique. What the source says is test it out first, somewhere hidden, like behind a couch or in a closet.
Oh, smart.
Yeah, that way you can play with it, see if it's a perfect match before you go to town on the main scratch.
Okay, that takes a lot of pressure off. But what about those deeper scratches, the ones that are more than just a surface thing? I'm picturing like my dog skidding across the floor, claws out.
Oh, yeah, those are a bit tougher.
Yeah.
We're talking about scratches that actually get down into the wood. For those, you usually got to do some light sanding to smooth it out before you can put on any stain or sealant.
Sanding. Okay, now I'm getting intimidated. What kind of sandpaper even? Do I need a power sander for this?
No, don't worry. For most at-home stuff, you can just use some fine grit sandpaper and one of those sanding blocks. It's all about gently getting rid of that imperfection so you can see that nice wood underneath.
Oh, okay, so I can handle that. And you always sand with the grain.
Always with grain, yeah. Don't want to make any more scratches.
Got it. Follow the grain.
Yeah.
But sanding takes off the stain, doesn't it? How do you match the stain after you've sanded? That's always been a mystery to me.
See, that's where the real art and science of wood finishing comes in. There are so many different stains out there.
Yeah.
Oil-based, water-based. They all react differently depending on what kind of wood you have.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. So what the source recommends is test it out. Grab a scrap piece of wood from the same floor or maybe even a hidden spot and see how the stain looks before you put it on the main repair area. You want to blend it all in perfectly.
Right. Got to be a bit of a detective. Okay, we've got the scratches covered. What about dents? Like you drop something heavy on the floor. This source actually recommends using an iron and a damp cloth. Is that real?
Oh, yeah. It totally works. It all comes back to how those wood fibers act. When they get wet and warm, they swell up naturally.
Oh, interesting.
So you put that damp cloth down, warm it up with the iron, and it basically tricks those wood fibers into plumping up and filling that dent.
Wow, that's pretty clever.
Right.
Like a little spa treatment for the wood. But what if the dent's just too deep? Or worse, what if it's a gouge, not just a dent?
Yeah, if it's a gouge, that's a different story. You got to bring in the wood filler. It's like spackle, but for wood. It fills in those gaps, gives you a smooth surface to work with.
Okay, so I picture like a tube of wood filler, kind of like caulk, but how do you choose which one to use? And then how do you even make it blend in?
Well, there's a bunch of types. Water-based, solvent-based, you name it. Water-based is usually the easiest for DIY.
Yeah, makes sense.
And for color, a lot of them come pre-tinted, so you can try to match your floor.
So you're kind of sculpting then, right?
Yeah.
Filling it in, shaping it.
Exactly. Thin layers, let them dry completely, then sand them smooth.
Just like sanding a scratch.
Yep. With the grain, always with the grain.
Man, this is more than I thought. There's a real art to wood floor repair. Okay, now, thinking worst case scenario, water damage. Like a spilled glass is one thing, but what if it's a bigger leak, like something serious?
Yeah, that can be a nightmare for sure. But it all depends. Was it a little puddle, cleaned up quick, or was the whole floor soaking wet?
Right, spilled drink versus like a burst pipe. Those are different.
Huge difference. If it's a small spill, the most important thing is to act fast. Towels, wet dry back, whatever you got. Suck up that water ASAP.
Okay, makes sense. Get it out of there.
And then it's all about drying. Windows open, fans on, dehumidifier if you got
It's
it.
like you're creating a mini weather system for your floor.
Pretty much. You got to get that wood dry fast and even. Otherwise, you're going to get warping and cupping.
Right, and we don't want that. But what about those white stains that happen after a spill? Are those like a permanent scar?
Not always, no. If they're light, you can usually buff them out with a mix of white vinegar and warm water.
Really?
Yeah, vinegar is a little acidic, so it helps break down those mineral deposits that make the white marks.
Oh, that's good to know. I always thought those white marks were a goner. So once it's dry and no more white marks, what's the next step?
Once it's totally bone dry, you got to check if the finish is okay. Might need a touch-up or a whole new coat.
Like a fresh layer of protection.
Yep, keeps that wood safe from future moisture problems and brings back the shine.
Okay, so a little TLC can go a long way. But let's talk about those serious water damage situations, like the whole floor is flooded. What then?
Yeah, that's when you probably got to call in the pros. That kind of damage is not just the wood floor, it's the subfloor too, maybe even structural stuff.
Okay, yeah, sounds intense.
Big time.
Yeah.
But even if you're calling in help, it's good to know what they're going to do, right?
Totally.
The sources, they actually go through the whole process, like taking out the planks, drying the subfloor, putting in new ones. You can kind of see if you think you could handle it yourself or not.
That's so helpful. Knowledge is power, even if you're not doing the work yourself.
Exactly.
So, quick recap with water damage, speed is key.
Oh, absolutely. Get that water out of there ASE. The faster you can dry it out, the better chance you have to save your floor. And remember, it's got to be completely dry, not just on the surface.
No hiding moisture.
Nope. You'll regret it later.
Okay, good advice. Now, let's talk about those gaps between boards. It always feels like the floor is breathing, like expanding and shrinking with the seasons.
That's a good way to put it. It all comes back to that humidity thing we talked about.
Right.
Wood expands and contracts when the moisture levels change. So controlling the humidity in your house, that's super important if you want to avoid gaps.
It all connects back to the moisture.
It really does.
Okay, so what do you do if you already have those gaps? Can you make them go away?
Oh, yeah, definitely. For little gaps, the sources say a flexible wood filler can do the trick. It matches the floor color. You just squeeze it in, sand it down after it dries.
Okay, so wood filler for the small guys. What about the big gaps, the ones you can practically see through?
For those, you might have to get some thin strips of wood. They call them slivers. Basically, you're replacing that missing wood like a little puzzle.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you cut them to fit, glue them in, sand it all smooth.
Sounds like a pro job.
It takes some practice. But once you stain and seal them, you won't even know they were there.
Okay, wood filler for the small gaps, slivers for the big ones. Got it. But is there any way to prevent those gaps from happening in the first place, besides the humidity control?
Well, something the source doesn't really say, but it makes sense, is think about what kind of wood floor you have.
Oh.
Solid wood planks, they're more prone to expanding and shrinking with the humidity compared to engineered wood.
Oh, interesting. So if you're worried about those gaps, maybe engineered wood's the way to go.
Could be. Engineered wood, it's made with layers of wood veneer over a core of plywood or fiberboard. Basically, it's more stable, doesn't change as much with the humidity.
Good to know.
Yeah, it's all about choosing the right type of wood for your house and how you live.
So we've covered scratches, dents, water damage, and the gaps. I feel like I'm already a wood floor expert.
Almost.
Yeah.
But Before we go any further with the fixes,
Yeah.
I think it's worth taking a step back and looking at the bigger picture here. We keep saying wood's a living thing, but what does that really mean for how we treat our floors?
Ooh, I like that. It's like we're getting philosophical now.
Right. It's more than just fixing stuff. It's about understanding the wood and
Yeah.
working with it. And that's what leads us to this really interesting idea from the source. Proactive care.
Proactive care.
Proactive care. Instead of just reacting when something breaks, what if we try to prevent the problems in the first place?
I like that. Anything to avoid those repair headaches.
Right.
So what does that look like? Proactive care for wood floors.
Well, it's the little things, like
Mhm.
felt pads on furniture legs to stop scratches, sweeping regularly to get rid of dirt.
Right, so that dirt doesn't turn into sandpaper.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And cleaning up spills as soon as they happen.
Okay, so no more procrastinating when I spill my coffee. Got to protect those floors.
Gotta act fast. And speaking of moisture, we got to mention humidity control again.
Right, because even if I'm super careful, those seasonal changes can still cause problems, right?
Well,
Especially those gaps.
yep. So the source recommends keeping the humidity inside your house between 40 and 60%.
Okay, so humidifier in the dry months, dehumidifier when it's humid. Got it. But I'll be honest, sometimes I forget to adjust that stuff. Is there anything else I can do?
Well, besides choosing the right type of wood, like we said, area rugs,
Area rugs.
especially in high traffic areas or where spills happen a lot, or like a buffer, protecting the wood from both moisture and just general wear and tear.
So like adding an extra layer of armor?
That's it. So we've covered a lot today. We talked about what kind of damage there is, moisture control, and even some preventative stuff. I think we're ready to dive into the actual repairs now.
I think so too.
All right, let's do it.
Let's fix some floors. Okay, so before we were talking about those light scratches and using those wood repair markers or wax sticks. What are like the pros and cons of each one?
Good question. They both work really well to hide those small scratches, but they do different things.
Okay, so like what's the difference?
So the markers, they're basically like a felt tip pen with stain in it. So those are great for coloring in the little thin scratches. Blends them right in.
Yeah.
But wax sticks, those are made of a mix of waxes and pigments. They actually fill the scratch a little more.
Oh, so it's like a little tiny filler almost.
Exactly. So which one you use kind
Yeah.
of depends on how bad the scratch is. If it's super fine, a marker is probably enough.
Yeah.
But if it's a little deeper, the wax stick's going to give you better coverage. And it'll last longer too.
Okay, makes sense. And I remember you said to test the color first in a hidden spot.
Oh yeah, always test it.
But what if you can't find a perfect match? Like what if it's a little off?
Well, then you got to get a little creative. Sometimes you got to mix a couple of colors together to get it just right.
Huh.
You could even use one of those tiny artist brushes to put it on if you want to be really precise and get a good blend.
Oh, that's a great tip. Okay, so moving on to those deeper scratches now, the ones we need to sand. You said fine grit sandpaper. How do I know what grit to even start with?
So the grit number, that tells you how coarse the sandpaper is.
Right.
Higher the number, finer the sandpaper. For most wood floor repairs, you want to start with something medium, like around 120 grit.
Okay.
That'll get rid of the scratch, smooth it out. And then you go up to a finer grit, like 180 or 220, to get that super smooth finish.
Okay, so it's a process. Got to work your way up. I'm still a little scared of sanding, though. Any tips to avoid messing it up?
Oh yeah, for sure. The number one thing, always sand with the grain of the wood, never against it.
Okay.
If you go against the grain, you make all these little scratches that are super hard to get rid of. And don't press too hard.
Yeah.
Let the sandpaper do the work.
Yeah.
If you push down too much, you can actually gouge the wood.
Okay, got it. Light touch, follow the grain, and be patient. So once I'm done sanding, what's next? You mentioned staining, but there are so many kinds of stain. How do I choose the right one?
Yeah, it can feel overwhelming, for sure.
Mm.
First thing, got to think about what kind of wood you have. Different woods soak up stain differently.
Yep.
Like pine, that's a softwood, it can get blotchy with the stain. But oak, that's a hardwood, soaks it up more evenly.
So the type of wood kind of tells you what stain to use.
Yeah, it's a big factor.
Yeah.
But you also got to think about the look you're going for. You want to keep natural or go darker.
I like the natural look personally.
Then you might want to try a water-based stain. Those are usually easier to work with, clean up easy, and they dry faster than oil-based ones.
Okay, so water-based for natural and easy cleanup.
Plus, they have less of those nasty VOCs, those chemicals, so they're better for the environment too.
Oh, Bonus. What about the oil-based stains, though? When would you use those?
Oil-based films are super durable, and they give you a really rich color.
Hmm.
They soak in deeper into the wood, so they last longer. The downside is they smell kind of strong, and they take longer to dry, so you got to have good ventilation.
So it's like a trade-off. Water-based is easier and eco-friendly. Oil-based is tough and colorful. Okay, so I've chosen my stain. Now, how do I actually put it on?
Application, that's key. You got to get an even coat, go with the grain of the wood, just like with sanding.
Yep.
You can use a brush, a rag, even a foam applicator. Just don't leave any puddles or streaks.
That's a real art form.
It is. Got to be precise.
Mm.
And just like anything, the more you practice, the better you'll get at it.
Okay, feeling more confident already. Now, what about sealant? Do you always have to put sealant on after you stain?
Oh yeah, sealant's super important. It protects the stain and the wood itself from moisture, scratches, all that stuff. It's like a shield so your floors stay beautiful.
Okay, sealant's a must. But what kinds are there, and how do you know which one's right?
Okay, so there's two main types.
Yeah.
Surface finishes and penetrating finishes.
Okay.
Surface finishes, like polyurethane or varnish, they'll sit on top of the wood, make a protective layer.
Okay.
They're really durable, good for high traffic areas.
Right.
Then there's penetrating finishes. Those soak into the wood pores, give it a more natural look, like tung oil or Danish oil. Those are good examples. They're not as tough as the surface finishes, but they're easier to fix if they get scratched up.
So surface finishes are like armor, and penetrating ones are like a second skin?
I like that. Which one's best for you? It depends on your life, really. Got kids, pets running around, probably want that surface finish.
Makes sense.
But if you like that natural look and feel, penetrating's good too.
This is all making so much more sense now. I'm actually starting to understand wood floor care. Okay,
Yeah.
let's talk about dents now. We talked about the iron trick for little dents, but what about the big ones, or gouges? That's when we use wood filler, right?
Got it. Wood filler's a lifesaver for those deeper messes. It's like a putty, fills in all those holes, gaps, cracks, dries hard as a rock, then you can sand it smooth.
Okay, so it's like that caulk stuff, but for wood.
Kind of, yeah. The important thing is choosing the right color. Got to match your floor. And the right consistency, too. Some are thick, some are more runny. For DIY, medium consistency is usually best.
Okay, so color and consistency. Got it. But how do you actually put it on? Just squeeze it in the hole and you're good.
Well, there's a little more to it than that. For the best results, you got to put it on in thin layers. Let each layer dry completely before you do the next one. That helps prevent it from shrinking and cracking later.
Oh, okay.
And it's good to overfill the hole a little bit because it'll shrink a tiny bit as it dries.
So patience and layers are key. What about sanding, though? Do you sand the filler once it's dry?
Absolutely. Got to sand it smooth so it's all one level with the rest of the wood. Start with medium grit, then work your way up to finer grit. Blend, blend, blend.
Same as with the scratches, right? With the grain, light touch, all that.
Exactly. Follow the grain, be gentle, and if the dent or gouge is really deep, you might need to do a few layers of filler. Just remember to let each layer dry completely before you put on the next one.
Got it. This is like wood sculpture.
Kind of.
You're really reshaping the wood with the filler and sanding.
That's a good way to think about it.
So, scratches, dents, even the big gouges.
Yeah.
We've covered a lot. What's next on our list?
Well, I think it's time to talk about the big one, water damage.
Oh, yeah, that one's a little scary. Water damage always feels so serious.
It can be, but it doesn't have to be a disaster. It really depends on how bad it is and how fast you deal with it.
Okay, so let's break it down. What are the different kinds of water damage, and when should I call in a pro?
First thing, got to figure out how bad it is. Was it a tiny spill that you wiped up right away? Or was the whole floor underwater?
Right, like my water glass tipped over versus a pipe burst and flooded the whole room. Big difference.
Huge difference. If it's just a little spill, the key is speed. Soak up as much water as you can, fast, towels, shop vac, whatever it takes.
Okay, get rid of the water. Got it.
And then you got to dry the area completely, open windows, fans, even a dehumidifier if you have one.
Like we talked about before, all about the airflow.
Exactly. But what about those white stains that sometimes happen after a spill? Are those gone for good?
Yeah, I was wondering about those.
Not always. If they're light, you can usually get rid of them with some white vinegar and warm water. Mix it up, wipe it on, and the vinegar helps to break down those minerals that make the white marks.
Oh, another vinegar win. I'm going to need a whole gallon of this stuff. But what if the stains are really stubborn?
For tougher stains, you can try a wood bleach product from the store. They have oxalic acid in them. That's a strong bleach. Just be careful, follow the instructions on the bottle. It can be harsh.
Okay, so vinegar for the light stuff, wood bleach for the heavy duty. Got it. But what about those cases where the water damage is really bad, like a pipe bursts, the whole floor is soaked? What then?
Yeah, if it's that bad, it's better to call a professional. They know they're doing, they have the right equipment to get all that water out, dry everything properly.
Yeah, that makes sense.
They can also tell you if your floor can be saved or if you need to replace it.
Better safe than sorry, right?
Definitely.
Yeah.
But even if you're calling in the pros, it's still good to understand what they're going to do.
For sure.
Like our sources, they actually go through the whole process step by step,
Oh, interesting.
so you can at least follow along and know what's going on.
Yeah, that helps you feel more in control, even when it's a stressful situation. Okay, so we covered water damage from tiny spills to major floods. I feel like we're on a roll here. What's next on our wood floor adventure?
Well, I think it's time to tackle those pesky gaps between the boards.
Oh, the gaps. It's like a reminder that even the toughest wood floors are still part of nature. They change with the seasons.
That's a great way to put it. It all comes back to that humidity thing.
Yep, the wood breathes.
It does. And it expands and contracts with the changes in moisture. So what's the solution once those gaps have already shown up?
Yeah, how do you make them go away?
Depends on how big they are. If they're little, that flexible wood filler can work great. Like a putty, you squeeze it in, let it dry, sand it smooth.
Okay, so wood filler for the small gaps. But what about the big ones? The ones you can practically drop a coin in?
For those, you might need to use those thin strips of wood. They call them slivers.
Slivers.
Yep. It's like putting a little wood puzzle back together. You cut the slivers to fit perfectly in the gap, glue them down, sand them flush with the rest of the floor.
Wow, sounds pretty advanced.
It takes some practice, but once you stain and seal those slivers, you can't even tell they were there.
It's like magic. Okay, wood filler for the little gaps, slivers for the big ones. Got it. But is there anything you can do to prevent those gaps from happening in the first place, besides controlling the humidity?
One thing the source doesn't really talk about, but it's important, is sealing up those air leaks around your doors and windows. Those leaks let moisture in, and that can mess with the humidity inside your house.
Oh, so it's not just about controlling the humidity, but also stopping it from sneaking in from outside.
Exactly. Got to create that stable environment for your floors, keep them happy. And, remember, wood's hygroscopic, which means it sucks up moisture from the air and then releases it again.
Hygroscopic, that's a fancy word.
It just means that wood's always talking to the air around it.
Oh, I see.
That's why humidity is so important. Air's too dry, wood shrinks, gaps appear. Air's too humid, wood swells up, you get cupping and buckling.
It's a delicate dance. Gotta find the sweet spot. But what if you live in a place that's naturally super dry or humid? What then?
That's where acclimation comes in. Before you even put the wood floor down, you got to let it get used to the environment.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, store it in the room where it's going to be for a few days, even weeks. Let it adjust to the temperature and humidity.
So it's like letting the wood get used to its new home before you lock it in place.
Exactly. And this is super important for solid wood floors. They're more sensitive to changes than engineered wood.
Okay, acclimation, got it. So once the floor is down, what are some things I can do to keep the humidity in check?
Easiest thing, get a hygrometer.
Oh, what?
Hygrometer, you can find them at any hardware store. It measures the humidity in the air, tells you how much moisture is in there.
Oh, okay, like a little humidity detective.
Exactly. Then you can use a humidifier to add moisture if it's too dry, or dehumidifier to take it out if it's too damp.
It's like climate control, but just for your floor.
Pretty much. Keep it stable, keep it comfy.
Okay, so we talked about humidity a lot, but what about other stuff? You mentioned doormats and furniture pads. Anything else I can do to protect my floor from, like, everyday life?
Oh yeah, tons of stuff. Like be careful what you're wearing on your feet. High heels, those can dent wood floors easily, and shoes with rough soles. Those can scratch them up. Best thing, take your shoes off at the door or wear slippers.
Shoes off or slippers on, got it. But what about pets? My dog's always running and sliding across the wood floors.
Yeah, pets, that can be a little tricky.
Right.
Make sure the nails are trimmed. Sharp nails can really do some damage. And use area rugs in those high traffic areas. Gives the floor some extra padding.
Okay, nail trims and area rugs, pet proofing.
Exactly.
What about cleaning? We talked about spills, but what about just regular cleaning? How often should I clean my floors? How should I do it?
How often? Really depends on how you live. Got a busy house, lots of people coming and going. You'll need to clean more often. But for most people, sweeping or vacuuming a couple times a week is enough to get rid of the dust and dirt.
Makes sense. But what about mopping? Can you even mop wood floors?
You can, but you got to be careful. Too much water is bad news for wood floors.
Right.
So use a damp mop, not soaking wet. And make sure you use a cleaner that's made for wood floors.
Damp mop, wood floor cleaner. Got it. But what about those commercial wood floor cleaners? Are those okay to use?
Some of them can be pretty harsh, you know.
Oh, yeah.
They have chemicals that can actually strip the finish off your floor. Always read the label, make sure it says it's pH neutral and safe for your type of finish.
Okay, so read the label carefully, but are there any homemade cleaners I can use?
Oh, absolutely. One of the best is just white vinegar and water. Vinegar is great for cutting through dirt and grime, and it kills bacteria too.
White vinegar, it's like the superhero of cleaning.
It really is.
So how much vinegar, how much water, what's the recipe?
Usually about 1 cup of vinegar to a gallon of warm water is good. You can even add a few drops of essential oil if you want it to smell nice.
Oh, that's a good idea. Homemade, natural, smells good. I like it. But what about those really stubborn stains? The ones that just won't go away with regular cleaning. Any tips for those?
For those tough guys, you can try baking soda. Just mix it with a little water to make a paste, put it on the stain, let it sit for a bit, then scrub gently.
Oh, baking soda. It's like magic.
It is kind of magical. It's a gentle abrasive, so it helps lift the stain without messing up your floor.
Okay, so baking soda for the stubborn ones. But what about the really bad stains, like if you spill red wine or ink? Are those just like a lost cause?
For those really bad boys, you might need something a little stronger. There are stain removers you can buy, but you can also try hydrogen peroxide. Just a little bit, let it sit on the stain, then wipe it off with a damp cloth. It's a bleaching agent, so it can help lighten the stain.
Okay, hydrogen peroxide for emergencies. But it sounds like prevention is really the best way to keep those wood floors looking good.
Absolutely. The more you do to protect your floors, the less you got to worry about fixing them.
Makes sense. And it's not just about looks, it's about keeping them healthy and making them last longer.
You got it. Wood floors are an investment. Take good care of them, and they'll take care of you. So we've covered a lot today, from the basics of wood to all kinds of repairs and preventative stuff. Before we wrap up, I want to go back to something you said earlier.
Okay.
About shifting our mindset from just reacting when something's broken to being proactive. What does that actually look like in real life?
That's a great question.
It's about changing the way we see our homes, you know?
Yeah.
Instead of thinking of them as just like static places, what if we see them as these dynamic systems where everything's connected and kind of alive?
I like that. Like, we're not just living in our homes, we're living with them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that means thinking about how what we do affects our surroundings. We should choose materials that are good for us, good for the planet, and we should take care of what we have, fix things up instead of just throwing them away.
So it's about sustainability, making smart choices, and appreciating the value of what we have.
That's it. But what about those times when things do go wrong? How do we handle those repairs with that same proactive mindset?
That's a good point.
It's about seeing those repairs as a chance to learn something new. Embrace the little imperfections. Understand that our homes, they're always changing, just like us.
I like that. See the beauty in the imperfections, enjoy the process. It's not just about the end result.
Exactly. And that brings us to something really interesting. We've been talking a lot about the practical stuff, the how-tos. But there's an emotional side to taking care of our homes too, isn't there?
Oh, absolutely. Our homes hold our memories, our feelings, all of that.
Exactly. So when we take care of our homes, we're also taking care of ourselves and the people we love.
Wow, that's deep. I feel like we went from fixing wood floors to, like, the meaning of life.
It's all connected, right?
It really is. This has been an amazing journey learning about wood floors. I feel like I know so much more now, not just about the repairs, but about what home really means and how to make smart choices.
That's great to hear. Remember, knowledge is power. The more you understand, the more confident you'll feel taking care of your home.
Absolutely. Okay, well, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive. But before we go, I want to leave our listener with one final thought. What if we shifted our mindset from just fixing things to taking care of them? What if we thought about our wood floors not just as something to walk on, but as a living, breathing part of our homes?
That's a beautiful way to put it. It opens up a whole new way of thinking. Imagine choosing wood floors not just because they look nice, but because they're sustainable, they last a long time, and they can even make the air in your home healthier.
Whoa, hold on. Healthier. Tell me more about that.
Well, some types of wood, especially the ones from sustainably managed forests, they can actually help control the humidity and clean the air in your house.
Really?
It's like having a natural air purifier built right into your floor.
That's amazing. So by choosing the right wood and taking good care of it, we're not just making our homes beautiful, we're making them healthier too.
Exactly. And it's not just the wood itself, it's how you install it too.
Oh, right.
If you use those low VOC adhesives and finishes, those don't release as many harmful chemicals into the air.
So many things to think about. There's a whole world of knowledge behind something as simple as a wood floor.
There really is.
Mhm.
And the more we learn, the more we can appreciate how amazing wood is. It's beautiful, it's useful, and it can even be sustainable.
It feels like we went from wood floor beginners to experts in just one deep dive.
That's the power of learning. Who knows, maybe this deep dive will inspire some people to go even deeper.
Oh, yeah, like what kind of stuff?
Maybe they'll research different types of wood, learn about sustainable forestry, or even try refinishing their own floors with eco-friendly products.
I love that. It's so cool how knowledge can make you curious and give you the power to make better choices.
Exactly. And speaking of choices,
That.
I think it's time to wrap up our deep dive for today. But before we go, I want to leave our listener with one final thought. Next time you walk across your wood floor, I want you to really take a moment to appreciate it.
Okay.
Feel that warmth under your feet. Look at the grain, how unique it is. And remember, this beautiful floor came from a living tree. Let that feeling guide how you care for it, how much you respect this amazing gift from nature.
Wow, that's beautiful. I'm feeling so inspired. Thank you so much for sharing all of this with us today. I know our listeners are going to be excited to fix up their floors and take good care of them.
That's what we hope for. Remember, knowledge is power. With a little bit of effort, we can all have beautiful, healthy homes.
That's the truth. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of wood floor care. Until next time, keep learning, stay curious, and take good care of those beautiful floors. You know, I'm still thinking about that idea about those wood floors being like a living part of our homes. It really changes how you see them.
Yeah, it makes you realize it's not just about the practical stuff.
Right.
It's about how those materials, how they connect to us on a deeper level,
It really does. And it makes you think, like, what else are we missing? What other cool things can wood floors do for us that we don't even realize?
I know. And it's funny you say that because there's this whole thing called biophilic design.
Biophilic design.
Biophilic design. Basically, it's the idea that humans were naturally drawn to nature.
Okay.
And if you bring elements of nature into your house or your office, it can actually make you healthier and happier.
Oh, interesting. So like having plants around, lots of natural light, that kind of thing.
Exactly. But it's more than that, too. It's about using natural materials like wood, stone, water. It's about creating a space that feels connected to the natural world.
Okay, so where do wood floors fit into all of this?
Well, wood floors are a perfect example. They bring that warmth, that natural element into the space.
Right.
The texture, the color, even the smell of wood. It all adds to that feeling of peace and well-being.
So it's not just about how they look, it's about how they make you feel.
Exactly. There's actually a bunch of research now showing that being around nature can lower your stress, make you feel happier, even help you think better. And wood, with its unique look and feel, it can totally create those good vibes in your home.
Wow, I had no idea. So there's like a real reason why we love wood floors so much.
Could be. Some scientists think it goes back to our evolution, for like forever. Wood's been used to build shelters, keep us warm, make tools. So maybe we're just naturally drawn to it. It feels safe and familiar.
That makes sense. Like wood is part of us somehow.
Right.
But it's not just about the past, right?
Right.
It's about how it makes us feel now.
Exactly. It's about the feeling you get when you walk barefoot on a wood floor, the way it looks in the sunlight. It just feels good.
It really does. It's like
that's
it speaks to us on some level. Okay, so if we see our wood floors as this living, breathing part of our home, and we know they can make us feel good, how does that change how we take care of them?
Well, it becomes about more than just keeping them looking good. It's about keeping them healthy, making sure they last a long time, choosing cleaning products that are good for our families, good for the planet, repairing them when they get damaged, instead of just replacing them, and just appreciating that natural beauty, little imperfections, the character. It's all part of the story.
I love that. Respect the wood, appreciate where it comes from, and take care of it.
Exactly. It's more than just a chore then. It's like an act of love. You're taking care of something precious.
It's like a partnership, right? Us and our floors working together to make our homes awesome.
I love that, a partnership. And the best part is, it's a win-win. It's good for us, and it's good for the planet.
So I think we've reached the end of our deep dive, but honestly, it feels like we just got started. There's so much more to learn about wood floors.
There is. But I hope this is giving you a new way of looking at your wood floors, appreciating how beautiful they are, how well they work, and how they can even make you feel better.
It totally has. I'll never look at my floors the same way again. Thank you so much for sharing all of this with us.
It was my pleasure. And remember, next time you're walking across your floor, take a minute to really experience it. Feel it under your feet. See all those little details in the wood. And remember, that came from a tree, a living, breathing tree. That should change how you think about caring for it.
That's a perfect way to wrap things up. Thanks for joining us on this journey into the world of wood floor care. Until next time, keep learning, stay curious, and take good care of those beautiful floors.